I'm Stephen Kendrick, and I'm running for mayor of Augusta. My dad started Augusta Blueprint over 50 years ago. I grew up right there, working, learning, and loving this city. I've served this community my whole life, from modernizing the tax commissioner's office to building youth leadership programs and bringing jobs to Augusta. Augusta's at a crossroads. We need someone who can build, grow, unite, and lead. Keep an open mind. Let me earn your vote the same way my family earned its place here, by working for it. All in for Augusta, all in for you. I'm Stephen Kendrick. Let me earn your vote.
Hello, I'm Stephen
I'm
Kendrick.
Stephen Kendrick,
I'm
and I'm
running for mayor, and I want to thank you for joining me for our live stream session tonight. Our first session started out talking about economic development, and the response was powerful and enlightening. People wanted to know the type of information we were providing. However, many in the community began to ask more about general government. So we pivoted and we began to try to address the questions we were being asked. Tonight, we're going to talk about the chaos that's happening in the city's government right now. Because if you've been paying attention, and I know a lot of you have, you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. A $21 million budget deficit, millions of dollars in federal funds that we're being told we can't fully account for. Departments are losing leadership, questionable reimbursements, consultants stepping in to run core functions of city government, and at the same time, questions about spending, questions about priorities, questions about judgment. Here's what we're getting into tonight.
Calling it financial mismanagement at Augusta's Housing and Development Office after finding nearly $7 million unaccounted for.
Tonight, Augusta commissioners have accepted Hawthorne Welcher's resignation. Is yet another department that the city now has to find a director for. The central services, finance, and IT departments are also needing spots
filled.
After
the resignation of the interim finance director, commissioners are turning to a consulting firm to run the finance department. The cost, $32,000 a month, an expense city leaders believe they will be paying for a while.
It's being raised about credit card use in the Augusta mayor's office. Mayor Garnett Johnson submitting receipts so he can get paid back for about $50,000 in charges.
Breaking news to share with you that we are following for you tonight. FBI agents were in Augusta today at the municipal building.
The city says it's had enough of million-dollar mistakes.
Now, let me be clear about something. This is not about one headline. This is not about one issue. This is about a pattern of mismanagement, a pattern of accountability, misplaced priorities, and no clear financial leadership. And whether people care to admit it or not, that responsibility starts at the top. Because leaders don't get to disappear and deflect when things get messy, or point fingers, or say it's not my fault, or say it's the last guy's fault. At some point, leaders must acknowledge that it's on me and own it. I've had some experience with that. I've had to do that in 2010, soon after taking office as tax commissioner, when someone broke into the municipal building and then broke into my office safes and stole $25,000 in checks and cash. I didn't wait. I didn't deflect. I didn't blame. I took responsibility and made changes. We immediately called law enforcement. We launched an investigation. We changed protocols. We supported additional security measures. And I stood in front of the public for over 2 hours at a press conference that I called, and I answered every single question. The incident happened. We made improvements. We got better. And we are still recognized as the best tax commissioner's office in the state of Georgia because of leadership. Look at some of the headlines from that time. The Augusta Chronicle wrote, "When was the last time you wanted to applaud a tax collector? Don't fight it. Richmond County Tax Commissioner Stephen Kendrick deserves it." The Augusta Press wrote, "Kendrick immediately took responsibility. There have been no further issues with the security of taxpayers' money." The Chronicle again noted, "My quick action in still another story." Now, I know some don't like me speaking of this since it was 16 years ago, but I'm talking about this because that is the type of leader you're getting with me. The buck stops with me. That's what I said then in an interview, and I meant it, because that's what leadership is. And here's the part that people don't talk about enough. I'm proud to say that there's not been another incident like that in 16 years. Now, let's fast forward to today. We have a real financial crisis happening in our city. Let's break this down now because these aren't just rumors. These are real numbers. Let's start with the first multi-million-dollar problem, the $6.8 million in federal COVID relief funds unaccounted for.
Have accepted Hawthorne Welcher's resignation. This comes months after the federal government ordered the city to pay them back millions of dollars in unspent grant money.
Development is burdening Augusta taxpayers. Last year, the department's misspending of federal rental assistance funds cost Augusta more than $8 million in reimbursement and penalties. Another $70,000 for auditors. Now the city bringing in a consulting firm at more than $8,700 per month to get the department up to proper accounting standards.
Still working to learn more about why the FBI was spotted at Augusta's municipal building yesterday. Agents told us they were at the building conducting law enforcement activities.
We don't know if it was just mismanaged. We don't know if it was theft because the record keeping was so poor. Even the auditors can't give a clear answer. But here's what should concern every taxpayer watching this. That money was supposed to help people pay rent during the pandemic. People who were suffering, people who were in need, people who lost their place to stay, and nobody knows where it went.
Numbers not adding up at an Augusta City department.
A recent audit cannot account for millions of dollars.
Auditors going before commissioners were pressed on whether this was sloppy bookkeeping or something more sinister.
There were significant internal control weaknesses, which equate to financial mismanagement.
The amount of the missing federal funds has city leaders making plans for an official request to have federal authorities open an investigation.
The Augusta Press confirmed a federal investigation the FBI was seen going into the finance department. The city had to pay back millions. And so, what's happened since then? No clear resolution, no clear accountability, just a deafening silence and acceptance that we're in crisis. Now, what typically happens when systems break down like this and leadership is unsure and inexperienced? In Augusta, we seem to start to look for answers by outsourcing and privatizing our government. We need to pay someone else to come in. You probably didn't know that at least 4 of our departments are currently being run by outside consultants right now. It costs taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars a month. It's even into the millions for one contract. Look at this. Right now, as shown earlier, the city of Augusta is paying an outside firm over $32,000 a month to run the finance department. We also showed you a different outside firm runs housing and community development. That costs about $8,700 a month. Still a third firm, $20 million to help run the transportation department for the next 3 years. And the city has already spent over $1 million in the last year outsourcing various payroll, benefits, and tax services to a fourth firm. And you know what that really means? It really means you and I are paying for it. So now, you've got taxpayers first funding problematic government departments. And then we go back and ask you to pay again, hire an outside expert to help try to fix it. Which brings us to the question, why do we need all of these outside private firms to run our government when we pay people to work there every day? Now, they probably don't want to draw too much attention to this, but a lot of the city's top leadership has actually left. Looks like the city's top leader can't seem to motivate, inspire, and keep employees. Take a look at this. People in 20 key positions in our city government have left under this administration. Take the finance department, for example. The interim director resigned 2 months ago. Oh, and the payroll manager, she's gone too. You see, the outsourcing company could do her job. The director of housing and community development suspended because of financial mismanagement. He later resigned. Of course, the leadership would like for you to believe that all the vacancies are created because of performance-related issues, but not the procurement director. She was forced out because she wouldn't break policy that the commission created. And the previous finance director, she was forced out for the very same reason. Same with the previous city administrator. Even though she had 2.5 years on the job and was the top candidate recommended from the consultants that the commission hired to fill the permanent position, she was forced out because she wouldn't play the game as well. They were all casualties of the "you won't bend the rules, so let's move on to someone else" culture that the staff has and is fearful and uninspired. With that kind of culture being the norm, the planning director, the traffic and engineering director, and the former city attorney, they just left as well. You get the picture. Nobody can or wants to work in this administration. And frankly, those who do and remain are catching hell trying to get up to speed. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the government in chaos and crisis. This is when you need a real leader. But look at what our current mayor is focused on. While the city was and is dealing with a major budget deficit, personnel issues, and outside consultants, the mayor's focus was on the $100,000 in reimbursements requested for his personal credit card for thousands of dollars he spent, supposedly on the city's behalf.
Asking to be reimbursed for about $50,000 in charges on his credit card. Mayor with concerns the mayor could be getting reward points for the charges, creating bad optics for his office.
Look at these receipts. Nearly $18,000 combined at the Masters on food, drinks, and parking spaces for unidentified guests. Nearly $4,000 at the Masters gift shop alone, again for unidentified guests. More than $2,400 for a White House state dinner. Thousands of dollars in hospitality spending. And listen, I'm not saying relationships don't matter. They absolutely do. But when you're asking for reimbursements to your personal credit card for the $25,000 you spent at the Masters in the gift shop and at the hospitality houses across the street on food and drinks and parking, you share no business purpose and no identification of who you entertain on the city's dime, all while we're struggling to balance budgets, all while we're deciding to cut nonprofits and NGOs who help the needy, all while we're dealing with severe financial stability. We should all question the sense of judgment and misplaced priorities that seem to be on display. But this last issue might be the biggest breach of all. It's about trust, and it borders on an outright lie. Your words need to match your actions. I'll let you see for yourself if they line up.
In June, the mayor requested to be reimbursed more than $57,000. We requested all receipts turned in by the mayor during this time. These expenses include conference trips, office supplies, mayor's master reception, and more. From January
as mayor, day one, I'll hand over the city-funded gas card in the vehicle too, and I'll pay for my own travel.
If you promise to pay for your own travel in a commercial, then why are you asking to be reimbursed for conference trips as we saw in the previous clip? You can't campaign on one thing and then do the exact opposite once you're in office. Plus, that city car didn't get returned to the city car pool. The only pool it gets close to is the one at his house. This isn't a case of these being misunderstandings. This is about doing what you say you're going to do and not just saying something for votes. And we haven't even talked about the budget. Augusta entered the 2026 budget cycle with a $21 million deficit. That's not a small oversight. That's not an accounting error. That's a system failure.
Augusta city leaders revealed the budget situation is much worse than we thought. Instead of an $11 million shortfall, we learned the shortfall is closer to $21 million.
And from rising costs to the end of COVID relief money, the city administrator compares the city's current financial situation to a house on fire. And now it's up to city leaders to figure out how to put that fire out.
Folks, the city administrator, our top staff, said this, not me. Our house is on fire. So let's put all this together. Millions unaccounted for, federal investigation, departments without leadership, outsourcing core functions of government, questionable spending, broken promises, budget corrections. That's mismanagement and poor leadership. And that's why I told you my story earlier. Because leadership is easy when things are going right and when you're campaigning. The real test is what you do when something goes wrong. This isn't about personalities. This is about priorities. Because when you're in leadership, you don't get to pick which problems you take responsibility for and then deflect the others. People don't expect perfection, but they do expect accountability. So when you hear about our government in chaos and crisis, when you see the headlines and news stories, when you find yourself asking, what is going on in our city? I want you to ask yourself a different question. Who is taking responsibility? Because if you trust me with your vote and give me the time to work with the commission to put together an achievable plan to go with the vision, I'll do for you what I did with the tax commissioner's office and tag offices when we modernized and delivered faster, friendlier, and better service and restored trust in how government could work. And I'll promise you this, I won't be mayor that has had plenty of opportunities to lead for 3 years, 3 months, and 21 days, and you hear me say, give me more time to fix this, or I need more authority to fix this, or if we only had the right people in place, I could fix this. The time to fix this is now. And I'll do it with whatever authority is presently there, charter change or no charter change. And I'll inspire the employees we have right now to work harder and smarter to deliver for you. The buck stopped with me when I was elected your tax commissioner. And as your mayor, it will stop with me there as well. Now, I know you've got questions, and tonight we're going to answer some of them. And as always, we got some in advance. If we can get the monitor situated for me to see, we can see how we get this started. So let's figure this out. Y'all stay with me. Put your question. I see some comments. I hear we got some comments. And if a comment is appropriate to put up and you want me to respond to the comments, TJ, I'll do that as well. So let me see what I can see here. Debbie Williams Walker, where is the money coming from to pay the consulting firms and from all of these audits? You said from us, the taxpayers. It was seen with all these facts, the only logical decision would be not to vote for the opponent. We will also be paying with a reduction in city services. Well, when you ask where the money comes from, of course, as I mentioned, it comes from the people and citizens who pay taxes here now. That is indeed a problem for most of us. We've got to find a way to create more revenue in this government. The issues and financial instability that is there is real. And it's going to take some really smart people some time to fix some of those problems. However, I believe it can be done. I believe some of it can be done with some of the people we have there now. We have employees that are now there, ready to go to work, ready to do the work, but they just want real leadership and a vision and a roadmap for what to do. And I want to be able to provide that. I want to be there for the employees of the city, and I want to be there for the residents of the county. Another question or comment. How does a city like Augusta end up with a $21 million budget deficit, and what specifically failed in the budgeting process? Well, the $21 million budget deficit, which actually started as an $11 million deficit earlier in that year, comes from a number of things. There were attributed to, or the issue was attributed to, some changes in personnel with public safety and our need to hire more in our public safety areas. There was some attributed to a change in healthcare costs. There was some attributed to a loss of funding that was stopgap funding that was there for the previous budget. In other words, we placed money to cover a hole when we knew we didn't have money to go back in that same hole the next year. That's a problem. And whenever we're talking about the failed budgeting process, we need to remember that it is a comprehensive process that goes on for several months. I believe we can do better in that process. I believe we can do better planning. I can believe we can do better with revenue generation. I believe we can do better with cost cutting. Hopefully, I'm going to get a chance to prove that. Another question or comment. What are your plans to generate more revenue for the city? Great question. I talk about this initially with just the first pillar of my campaign, that is to build. Part of the reason we don't have a lot of money is because we're not building anything with value to add to our tax base. I mentioned it in an early live stream. Our competing counties around us are building so many more single family homes that they have to create discretionary income, and it causes a deficit in Augusta. To be exact, Columbia and Aiken County built 36,000 more single family homes than Augusta did over the last 25 years. But what that means is when it's time to share the burden of who's going to pay for the increasing cost of running government, those that are us that are here are left to share that cost. An example would be if the cost of building roads goes up a few $1,000,000 each year, which it could, but we have the same 200,000 people with the same values on their homes, with the same number of parcels available, and no new homes being developed to share that cost, that means that cost has to come back to me and you. I believe we can do better by encouraging builders to build right here in Augusta, and I believe they will. I believe the opportunity for us to form those type of partnerships exists. I've had those conversations with some of them already, and I believe the tools and mechanisms for us to increase our city's ability to do just that, which is create revenue through building, is there. But we also can create it through helping new businesses move to town. And hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about that on another question. Next question. Is the floss tax that they want to establish truly going to benefit homeowners, or is it just a way to pay off the city's debt? So the floss is going to be offered on the next SPLOST on May 19th, and it's going to allow us to add a 0.5 cent to our sales tax to decrease voter costs or taxpayer costs. In theory, it's a pretty good idea. It will allow us to collect a 0.5 cent from everyone who spends money in our city, including all those hundreds of thousands of people who came in for the Masters. And when they spend that extra 0.5 penny, it will go towards reducing the liability you have to pay property taxes. So yes, it can be a help. Another question. Would you support significant improvements to downtown Augusta's skyline via the construction of more skyscrapers, high-rise buildings? Downtown is literally a downtown. Not enough space there. I believe in improvements. I'm not sure if skyscrapers are the answer, but if your gist is, or if your theory is, we need more building downtown, I'd say we have lots of activity going on there. If you stay tuned and watch, you're going to see some incredible activity going on in downtown. That's both at James Brown Arena. That's both with what's going on in the business district with the T-Splosh fixing the roads and streetscapes. I would hope that we could get additional housing and through skyscrapers or businesses. And I believe there's some additional stuff coming. Some of those projects are being promoted. Some of those projects are being offered. There are people looking at Augusta, Georgia. But sometimes when they look at Augusta, Georgia, it takes something for us to do to help them come on in the door. I'm all for having a better skyline, but I really would like to see us do better on the ground first as well. Another question. Should we vote yes for SPLOST? Well, in its current state, I believe the SPLOST could have been done better. I believe our current SPLOST should have had more quality of life things there so that people in our community could learn to live and love where they live. I believe what was done, although some of it was quite appropriate, was not balanced enough. I don't know if I can tell you whether or not you should vote for SPLOST, But what I can tell you is it could have been a lot better. And some of you will really have to consider whether or not you want more in your parks and in your recreation facilities. If you want more things that make this the type of place you want to live, the things that we're going to do with public safety are important because public safety is important to people wanting to come here. But if we don't have balance, if we just have this place where when people are here, when they're in trouble, when they get locked up, we have current great facilities, but we don't have a great park for the kids to go to in the summer and take swimming lessons, that's not going to balance out. Next question. How will you combat irrational fear of change in our city that grinds development to a halt? It tends to be very common with many people locally, especially elders. I don't know if it's an irrational fear of change. I would hope that most of our cities would see and want some change. It's the type of change they want, I think we need to worry about or work on. I think most people would like the type of change to see that we have well-lit neighborhoods in South Augusta that people can live in and people would enjoy. I think people would like the type of change, as the previous questioner asked, where we have large buildings in downtown that when guests came to town, our city looked like the type of city that was vibrant. I think people would like the type of change that would see a city provide the types of incentives for a grocer to finally locate in our eastern part of town so that those people who live down on Aiken Street in East Augusta don't have to go to North Augusta to get to Publix to buy groceries. I think that type of change people are longing for. And I think that type of change is available and possible. And I'm hoping that we're going to get a chance to put on the table some real ideas that will really work to move this city in that direction. Another question. How long do you think before the revenue is created? That's a tough one. I think that creating revenue through the building of homes can start immediately. But I think what you're really asking is, or saying is it going to move fast enough to stop the problems we have now? So that means we're going to have to do some things to tighten our belt. We're going to have to do some things to be smart about how we budget. We may have to look at our government and say, do we have the right number of people there? That's why I've called for an operational audit of our city. Not a financial audit immediately for all the departments, but an operational audit to determine whether everyone is right size. Do you realize how much money we could save if we figured out that the technology that is there in this world right now that is advancing everyone and everywhere throughout industries across this world was applied so that we can see that some of our departments could become a little smaller. Some of those empty positions that aren't filled but sit there unfilled could be moved, collapsed, and that money could be placed in a place where we could help fund our budget. I believe that's the first way we're going to have to start to fix some of these revenue issues, is looking for ways to squeeze. And frankly, I'm the only candidate that's run a $4.5–5 million budget that looks at how to do that within city government. We've done that on the ground, making sure that we have the right number of employees, that we have the right type of training for them. And I believe I can do that entire type of ideal for the city. Another question. Is it possible for our riverfront to be a destination like Savannah or Charleston? That's a great question, and we always talk about this. We want our city to look like those cities. But from what I understand, there are some issues that prevent us from having an open way to the river as those cities do. As most of you know, we have a berm, or as most of us may call it, that top of our river walk that blocks our openness to the river if you're on the Broad Street side. And so with that, there's not an ability for us to use that in the same way those communities do. Some of that has to do with our city of Augusta being in a bowl, and it's designed so that if something were to happen with the structures that hold the water back and hold our downtown from flooding, that would be partly a protectant. But I think we can do better than what we have. I think there are people who own private land on this side of the river, meaning the inside of the river, and there are ways in which we can enhance and look to use to drive people there and make it an attractive place. But those partnerships with those landowners has to occur. Those partnerships that make it to where those landowners who are there see themselves as a part of the solution has to start to happen. And again, I've had some of those discussions with some of those very landowners, and I believe it's something we can get done. Another question. How do you plan to improve schools to make building homes in the county more appealing? Interesting. Because at the heart of it, the direction and the performance of our schools belongs to our Richmond County Board of Education and the trustees who are elected to lead that, and the administrative staff who do that as well. I believe government and our mayor's role is to advocate and bring awareness to how we can help and support that school system. They have a governance structure and they have good people looking to run that system. But because we're in a city that's poor, because we're in a city where a lot of families struggle every day, a lot of the academic achievement that needs to happen doesn't happen. Some of that becomes a problem that we all inherit and share. It's not just the school system's problem. See, if you've got a kid that's going to school in the morning, but his mother, who's a single mother, is not there because she had to get up early and go to work, so he gets on the bus himself. And then that same kid coming home, latchkey kid we call him, in the afternoon to an empty home because that mother had to have a second job in order to make ends meet in today's climate. How can we not understand what's going on? This kid comes home to an empty home with no ability to be nurtured and helped like a lot of families do. That becomes the city of Augusta's problem too, because that mother who had to have two jobs couldn't afford a different place to live, couldn't afford to get a nanny or get a tutor for a kid. We've got to have some better jobs for her to get into. We've got to have workforce development programs for her to utilize. We've got to become a part of making Augusta a better place for workers and employees so she can have one job and be home at 5 o'clock and cook dinner and listen to him talk about how he's going to do that work. We all share that responsibility with the school system. And I've been one who's committed to it and been a part of it for the last 25 years. I've got a youth development program called the Youth Leadership Academy that we do with Richmond County Schools. I've got a program called Project Impact that I've done for years on Saturdays. I've got a program called Project Impact Her that we do with kids as well, all trying to add to helping these families, but we've all got to share it. And government's role is to try to make Augusta a better place to live so those single mothers and fathers and families can get to a place where they can be home to help their kids themselves. Next question. If elected, would you alternate the time of the commissioners' meeting between noon and evening meetings to give the public more opportunity to be engaged in city government? I personally could support this. That's not ever been an issue for me. I clearly understand the commissioners who are currently there talking about the length of their agendas, which is not quite comparable to our neighboring counties. I've heard some people say what the other governments do, but it's not quite the same because we're a little bigger and we have more complex issues, so it calls for longer meetings. And so in starting a meeting at 5 or 6 o'clock, it will go later into the night. But that's not a problem for me. I don't mind. I would be happy to start a meeting at 6 o'clock and we stay there until the work gets done. That doesn't become an issue for me. Now, I talk to the people who are currently commissioners and to see whether that's an issue for them. But for me, that's not a problem. And to those who talk about whether or not the employees would have to stay late, well, believe it or not, those employees who see themselves on the agenda, those employees who are leaders in our community would have an expectation that they're going to be able to do that as well. So you flex your schedule if you think you're going to be there that night late, and you allow somebody potentially who's been working late several other nights to come in a little later. There's ways to fix that, but I certainly could support a later meeting start time. Next question. Under the last presidential administration, Augusta was slated to become a cyber hub. Currently, the discussion has shifted to the danger of data centers, which could pollute the city, waste water resources, and raise energy costs for citizens. Do you see yourself being able to forward Augusta's cyber city agenda while protecting us from the reckless introduction of data centers? Absolutely. And while I think the term cyber center indicates our city's focus on technology related issues, data centers, being a back end portion of it, don't necessarily have to be a large component of what we do here. When we talk about Augusta being a cyber center, it is the brain trust that come here to think through the types of problems that technology can answer and the technology looks to work on. They are centered here in Augusta. Through our local cyber center, companies that come here look to come here for the workforce, for the technology, for all that goes on at Fort Gordon. But data centers, which are a back-end portion, aren't necessarily related. Those can be placed anywhere. It just so happens that people are looking in rural places and looking in places that are looking for income generation. I've gone on the record and said we have to go slow with this. The question about what data centers do is up in the air. I, for one, am comfortable with us continuing to study and look at it, and right now take a hands-off and slow down approach. I don't believe there are any current ones on the slate to come to Augusta. The one that's already there has moved forward, and we're going to get a good opportunity to take a look. But certainly, I don't believe our designation as a cyber city or potentially the cyber capital of the world is affected directly by us taking in data centers. We only have one big one that I know of right now, and I believe the move right now from your governing authority is to slow down and watch, and let's get some more information. Next question. There was this one time Augusta was about to get a premium brand name outlets mall that was meant to be open air. As mayor, would you support reconsideration for this project since it was discredited? I don't remember that, and I don't remember it being discredited, but I want any type of retail and dinner and food service development we can get to help bolster our budget and bolster the ability of people wanting to live here. I'm not sure that project you talk about, but I'm working on numerous projects right now to try to get organizations, businesses, restaurants, retailers to locate in Augusta. It's going to be a part of the equation. I talked about already having housing there as a part of the equation, but businesses coming to Augusta is a second large part of that equation. We have to have more businesses come to town to pay corporate taxes to bring the type of vibrancy that will attract people when those houses are built. We can't just build homes and then don't have any people anywhere for the people who live in the homes to go. So I'm super excited about the things that I'm trying to do to bring those types of things to town. And I hope that person will send me an email at kendrickformayor26@gmail.com so I can hear more about what they know so I can possibly track that down. Another question. Will you help get felons jobs and rehab to get back into society? I think that's always an important point, that we try to find a way to have people who have done time, who have paid for their transgressions, find a way for them to come back into society and be productive. It only makes sense. If we can't find a way for people who are looking to honestly say, I've done my time, I've learned my lesson, but I want to do something meaningful for life, it's what we should want, it's what God wants. We've got to include everybody in this community. And so, yes, I certainly would help. I certainly would look to the people who are experts at doing that. Certainly some folks out there in nonprofits who work on just that problem. But I certainly think myself and our government should support that. Another question. Would you help build and expand the local creator economy? I ask this since the Augusta area has lots of people getting more interested in career fields by using social media. And I presume by local creator economy, let me ask my local creator people, are we talking about social media creators and stuff like that? Okay, I just had to make sure. Is that what we're talking about, some of my folks? Okay. All right, so if that's the case, Of course, I own a printing company that has graphic designers. And while I was out canvassing yesterday, I ran into a young man and he told me he had graduated with a degree in media from Georgia Southern and graphic design, and he liked to work on social media and do social media creation. Today, that young man was in my business interviewing to come and work with us because there has to be a way for people who do this type of work to get involved and help create a newer and stronger economy. I have two daughters who work from home right now. The world is changing and where we work is going to change. And if it means that we're going from an industrial economy to a more technologically based creator economy, I'm supportive of that as well. I'm in support of any way that I can get people living in Augusta, making a decent salary, buying a home, buying a car, shopping at the Kroger right down the street, going to the cleaners down the street, dropping their kid off at the daycare right down the street, coming home every night, having dinner with their family, waking up on Saturday, watering their grass, having a cookout that night, and going to church down the street in the morning. That's the life I want to live. That's the life I want for everybody in Augusta. And if it helps by helping us, helping people like that find jobs, then so be it. Next question. Stephen, Mayor, tell them what you have brought to Augusta. I've talked about that before, and hopefully people have seen that on my website, some of the things I've done. I've certainly been involved in economic development for years, and so I've helped to bring things like the hub for community innovation to downtown, the Kroger to Jimmy Dias Parkway, the Top Golf that's there on Riverwatch Parkway. I've been involved at the lofts at King Mill and getting that project on the ground. But I'm most proud of the work I do with kids in the community and helping kids who are looking to find a way to become a part of this community by doing leadership development and community development. I'm most proud of that. I spent with my Hub Youth Leadership Academy kids. It was Arts and Culture Day. And so today our kids spent learning about arts as a career, the arts in our community, economic impact on the arts in our community. And I spent it with 40 kids from Richmond County schools, some from Columbia County, some from Aiken County, some from Burke County. These are kids I've been with since last July. We spent today together, them learning about that. And I put it on my Instagram today. I wasn't campaigning today. I spent my time with those kids. And that's what I enjoy the most. Another question. The water project wasn't discredited. They just couldn't land any big fashion brands. Okay, David. The site eventually became what is now the Top Golf location and the apartments next door. Okay. And so I may remember something about that. So the Costco and the Top Golf, when all of that was there over a decade ago, and we were looking at that project, or the city was looking at that project, I remember them looking at that because our malls be on major thoroughfares, I-20 being that major thoroughfare, it was a targeted space for it. I don't believe there's any more land there on that I-20 space for that. But hopefully projects like that can be brought to Augusta in other places. Open air outlet malls are going to be on the highway. And we've only got 2 exchanges, and the other exchange, a little ways up the street, has some projects looking at that as well that I can't talk about. But certainly, I'm interested in doing something with that as well. I'm glad you told me what that was about, Dave. How will small, locally owned businesses be included in your economic development strategy? So I own a small, locally owned small business. And I believe that we've got to find ways to make sure these businesses continue to find ways to thrive, including my own. So first of all, our local chambers of commerce, both the Augusta Metro and our Black chambers of commerce, are great advocates and do great programs for small businesses. They do great trainings, they provide great consulting, and they are the front door to that support. But I believe government can find ways to use this billion-dollar budget to help local governments. I think there's a way to make it to where local and small businesses have preferences in doing work with our government. And I know what they say. You can't do that. I know what they say. You'll get sued. But other cities find ways sometimes to find a way to put a local preference. Perhaps it means that we're going to tell the large contractor that comes in to do work here that he has to have a small business support system that allows them to be a part of the contract. There's many ways you can do that, but your government has to have the will to make that happen. I'm interested in such. Hopefully there's going to come a day where I won't be able to do business with our government anymore. When I become the mayor of this city, my business won't do business with our government. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see all the other businesses that are viable and able learn how to, and then become vendors for our city, and also find ways for the big companies who come in to have a preference for these small and local businesses as well. You can best believe we're going to work on something like that. Another few questions. What will you do to end the food desert in East Augusta? Keith, I don't know if I alone can end that food desert, but I can tell you I've been working on that project from the Kroger when it left 15th Street. I was there and a part of that project over a decade ago with Judge David Watkins and several other people looking to figure out how to bring that back. And I'll tell you, it's been happening for a decade. Believe it or not, there are people working on that every day and trying to locate a grocer in the eastern part of our town. But I told this story a little bit earlier, and I'll share it with you too. A friend called and had me explain this, but it's a business decision and we've got to get involved. So we know what happens when people are looking, Kroger's, Publix, grocery stores, any business. They look at places because they're there to make money. And when they're there to make money, they look at Augusta and they look at the surrounding areas. Remember, I told you those two areas around us, Columbia and Aiken County, have built 36,000 more homes over the last 25 years. So that means they have more people with disposable income that are actually living there. They are showing in the paperwork that businesses look at growth. They're growing. So those companies look at those places because they're chasing growth. And so when you're comparing apples to apples and they look at Augusta and those places, they go to those places because they see a growth pattern that we can't match right now. So what does government do? We've got to get involved by providing some incentives for that same Kroger who says, I got to go over here because it's growing, but you, Mr. Augusta, I don't see any growth, and I don't think I'm going to make enough money right there in your space. A government has to create the conditions for that business to succeed. And just like we go out and recruit Starbucks and Arubis and GF Casting to Augusta, we've got to find a way to recruit those grocers through government with whatever we have available so that that grocer can choose us rather than the other place because we put some incentives on the table. That's how you do it. That's what I'm committed to do. That's what I've tried to do. But guess what? You've got to be in the place and have the authority to do it. And then in the places where I've been working from, which is trying to get someone to come to South Augusta, trying to get someone to go to Regency Mall, I haven't had the authority to actually get those things done. But given the authority, given the influence to try to make that work, we're going to commit to doing the very same thing, trying to get those grocers in East Augusta, trying to get a development in places that are underserved, and trying to get this city exactly what we need it to be. Another question. If elected, would you have a formal partnership with local colleges and universities to have internship programs in the city government? It could enhance the younger market stay in Savannah, and perhaps you meant in Augusta. So listen, remember I told you about I have a youth leadership program? Well, I started that 20 years ago. And guess who had the only internship program for students in the city of Augusta with city government? It was my program. The Youth Leadership Augusta program provided internships for students that came through that program for students in the summer in our government. They worked in procurement, they worked in finance, they worked in the mayor's office, they worked in the landfill. We actually had people who were coming to our schools who were 11th and 12th graders get a real life experience working here in Augusta, trying to entice them to say, I want to stay in Augusta. So that idea has been done. That idea is ongoing. I have those types of ideas and have done those and have lots more, because guess what? Besides city government, our government can work with our Chamber of Commerce, who does a very similar program called Students to Work, to get even more businesses involved to try to create that type of atmosphere for kids. There's lots on the table to do, and I'm ready and willing to do so. Another question. We are not seeing the growth in Augusta. Most of the growth is in Evans. Absolutely. I just talked about that. That growth is in Evans. We understand why it's happening. They're choosing to build houses there. The same inventory is not here. We've got to do a better job in enticing those builders to build in Augusta. And I've got a plan to do that. Last couple of questions. Let me see what time is it. Last couple of questions. What systems should be in place to track and verify how public funds, especially federal dollars, are used? Well, we certainly have to have the right financial leadership in our finance department, first of all, to put those systems in place. While I've had experience in working with budgets, while I've had experience in the classroom actually teaching financial classes, I'm not a financial expert in the level that we're going to need in this government to run these types of things. And so the city of Augusta is going to have to hire the best of the best to help us get through these types of problems, to make sure we understand what are the parameters and guardrails when taking in federal funds. I've dealt with some of those on grants we've had, but we need somebody to protect our city and protect what we're trying to accomplish, and finding the right experts and professionals is the best way to do so. Is this going to be my last question? Yes, no? Yes, it is, they say. What immediate steps would you take to stabilize Augusta finance without raising taxes or fees? Great one to end on. And we talked about this a little earlier. I'm going to talk about streamlining government. We're going to talk about doing a operational audit to make sure that if the tax commissioner's office has the right number of employees, that the recreation department has the right number of employees, that procurement has the right number of employees, because when we figure that out and figure out that instead of having 2,800 employees, we potentially could have 2,600 employees, there's a cost savings there. We're going to analyze what technology can bring to the table to help us make sure our finances are stable. And we're just going to be open, honest, and smart, and come to you with a transparent look and saying, hey, ladies and gentlemen, here's what we got to do. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight, but it's going to get done. And so they've told me that we're ending this tonight. And I hope that most have gotten their questions answered. There's chaos and crisis in our city, and I believe we can do better. My pillars to build, grow, and unite this city are really, really important. Build up this city, both houses and people. Grow this city so that we can all share in the burdens of costing out what goes on in this city. Unite this city. And I didn't talk a lot about that today. We've got to be united. Augustas are all over the place. We're always at each other, where it's East versus West, men versus women, black versus white, Democrat, Republican. We find ways to be separate when we got to find a way to be together. But lastly, it's the leadership. I'm willing to put forth myself and offer leadership. I ask you to hold me accountable, and I ask you for your vote starting next week on Monday, April 27th, when early voting starts. And I ask you again up through May 19th, which is election day. Augusta, we can do better, and I can do this for you. I want to thank you for coming here tonight. I want to thank you for being a part of our live cast. We've got 2 more coming to this community. We'll announce that over the next couple of days. Next time, tell your family, tell your friends. We're going to be here. Bring your questions. If you got something you want me to talk about, send it to me like some of the others did. I'm Stephen Kendrick. I'm running for mayor of Augusta. I ask you for your vote. Thank you and good night.